These are probably the most exciting times I can think of to be in education. There's no better business, I think, to be in. I'm going to get down. I can't stay up here the whole time. And I want to share with you this slide. And I've been using this slide for about 6 months, and I stared at it the other day. And so pretty simple to think about. If students leave school less curious than when they started, we failed them. So the idea of change is, I looked at this about a week ago and I said it's wrong. And I changed it. So it now says this: if learners leave their educational experience less curious than when they started, we failed them. So what did I do? So I went from students to learners. And I say that because I think when we talk about students, it's kind of like you sit and I profess, you get. When I talk about the word, and I use the word learner, it's about active engagement. It's action. And, by the way, I as a teacher can be a learner. Actually, we're all learners. I don't know everything. I'm not here in front of you today knowing any more than anybody in this room. I don't think there's a great expert out there that knows everything. I think today's world, we're all learners. What else did I take out? Well, if you go back to that slide, I took out the word school. And I put in educational experience. I didn't know what else to put. I was going to put learning experience, but I'm still playing with that. So maybe you can help me. But what I was trying to get at is that you don't need school to learn. As a matter of fact, I would ask you all in this room, have you learned anything since you left school? Did anybody learn like a few things? So the question is, how come nobody values that? How come that's not all of a sudden valued? I mean, my former boss, Bill Gates, he could not be a technology director in a school in Missouri, actually, or Vermont or New Hampshire, or all 50 states. He doesn't have a degree. I think he has the knowledge. The air conditioning system in the building sounded like, but I think he could do it. I think you would let Bill Gates. That's going to be a nuisance. I think you would let Bill Gates take over the technology department in your system. But if you did it, you'd be violating a lot of regulations because he doesn't have the paperwork. I mean, there's so many changes going on in education, so many different things. We are probably faced with, we are looking at probably one of the most rapidly growing, if we want to think about it, industries in the world, learning. So this afternoon I'm going to, those of you that have heard me talk before, I like to give you my agenda. So my agenda's up here. I'm going to take a few minutes to set the stage for this learning, and I'm going to talk louder over this thing. And then I'm going to talk about the education landscape. What's it like in that world right now? And then I'm going to throw out the challenge, like what is it we need to be able to know and do? What's happening? And then I'm going to talk a bit about leadership for this work. Because, leadership is so important right now. And in education, we need to be the agents of the change. And at times we play around like we're the objects of it. Well, we're the objects because we're not leading it. We have to lead it. We have to get it done. That's where I want to take us this afternoon. I'm going to take my coat off because I'm dying of the heat in the room. And if while I'm talking you need to get up and move around and do something, please do. I mean, there's no data that supports the idea that you sitting there, you learn any better than I do. So let me get to this idea of setting the stage. So here's the point I want to make with you. The hardest part of change is not accepting a new idea. That's not the hard part. The hard part is letting go of the old. That's what the hard part is. It's letting go. We seem to have, like, if I always think of public education, and as a former commissioner and superintendent, it's like a 6 ounce or an 8 ounce or red Solo cup, whatever. And we just keep pouring in. And we just keep pouring in, and water's coming over the top, or whatever beverage you choose to pour in, just keeps coming over the top. That nobody's really, we don't take things out to make room. That's what's going on. And you see, this problem it affects our ability to innovate. This problem right here affects our ability to innovate. Usually I show these slides much later on in my talks, but I want to show you this. I want to give you a sense, those of you that know me, I want to show you what we do when people have an idea in our schools. So there's our school, and somebody has an idea. We'll make this a faculty meeting, and Jeff over here has that idea. And here's what we do. We take our school and we try to put his idea into it. You see how that idea just doesn't quite fit? This is what we do with his idea. We make it fit our school. And his idea had all these little things on the outside of it, these things out there. We can't see those being part of the school, so we cut them out. And those are what I refer to as next practices. Those are the ideas that we should be using in our system, but because we're not ready to let go of anything, we cut that all out. Does that make sense to you all? This is exactly what it looks like when we get a new idea. Let's make it fit. Let's let students use technology. Okay, that's a really great idea. We're going to do it. Here's the idea, but here's what we're going to do. We're going to let them do it on only Wednesday mornings between the hours of 8 and 8:30, supervised by 15 highly paid, whatever, but we squeeze it all into the day. That's not how you innovate. By the way, this is referred to, what you see here is called sustaining innovation. Doesn't change the system, just keeps the system in place. Keep putting stuff in it, but making it fit. What you should be doing is disruptive innovation. This is the work of Clay Christensen at Harvard. And this is what actually made our university pretty successful, is disruptive innovation. But here's what you do. You take the idea and you make the system change to get to accept the idea in its entirety into the system. Right? That's what disruption is. Now, disruptive innovation doesn't work well when it first begins. That's why, as educators, we don't like to do it. So I'll give you an example of disruptive innovation. The bag phone. How many people remember the first cell phone, that bag that you carried, and it was really cool? And you had an antenna that was magnetic, and you put it on your car, and you drove around, and that was great. Now, here's the deal. That really wasn't great. But they stuck it into society, and they let society keep changing it to make what we have today. Without the bag phone, you wouldn't have the iPhone or the Samsung. But you have to put it in, and it doesn't work. But you massage it, you move it. Does that make sense to you all, that theory? Because the theory is important. It's very important if we're going to move our schools. Because as superintendents, as leaders, when somebody has an idea, we put it in our school, and they say, it's not working well. Then what we should do is, well, what tweaks should we make to improve it? Right? Because the bag phone, I think we're about 13 or 14 generations beyond the bag phone in front of you right now. That's what disruption is like. Commodore 64. Remember the sound? That's what I was trying to do last night, but I got here too late. I was going to download the sound of the internet connection on the phone. And I was going to play it for you and say, we were there once, and now we're here. But they didn't, but they stuck it into the system in its entirety. So when you see change coming, as leaders, you have to take it and put it in and give it a shot. You've got to make that work. Disruptive innovation does this. It creates positive turbulence in your system. Positive turbulence means it's pushing you in the right direction. See, the challenge is this. It's the arrogance of success. is to think that what we did yesterday will be sufficient for tomorrow. It's not. I started teaching in 1973. I had the Encyclopedia Britannica. Now we don't use it. Well, maybe nobody uses that anymore, right, in the classroom. But I mean, we have moved way beyond. When you think of the rapid change in education, I was just wanting to share with you, these are the last 6 or 7 books that I've read. Nothing talks about continuing to do what we're currently doing. Everything says, move, quick. See that book on the bottom, Rookie Smarts? Rookie Smarts, the subtitle to that is Why Learning Beats Knowing in the World Today. Why learning beats knowing in the world today. That's a whole different sense of what's going on. That other book up there, The End of Average. If you haven't read The End of Average, as an educator, we all should be reading that. It talks about the fact that there is no average. Yet we benchmark everything against some value, some point that doesn't exist. So if these books are starting to drive the thinking, where are we going? Right? That's the issue, is we've got to catch up to this market. So throughout my talk, as I set the stage, I want to put up some key messages that I want you to make sure that I'm going to say them now, and you'll see them emerge in the talk this afternoon. The first is this. We talk about our students and encouraging our students to have a growth mindset. We have to have a growth mindset as educators. I'm so tired of educators pushing back, saying, we can't do this. We can't do this. I say what we should be doing is give them Carolyn Dweck's book and say, you talk about your students when you give them something new to learn and you're there to encourage them. We should be doing that on our faculty, with our staff. We should have a growth mindset as educators. Our mindset should be, bring it on, we'll make it work. Innovation is an essential skill now. Used to be nice. Used to be nice. People would say, I'd love to get an innovative administrative team on board, but right now we just got to hold the fort down. That bus has left. It's now about learning. It's not about teaching. It's about learning. And assessment is part of learning. Wouldn't it be great if we taught our students, if they were in the process of learning, to be able to say to us, to their teacher, I understand this part, but I don't understand this part. And that they assess their own learning. They see learning and assessment as one thing. Most students see assessment as something that's external that comes on top of them. Wouldn't it be great if, as a student, students were answering a question on a test, and it was an open-ended question, and they were able to write on there to their teacher, Mrs. Jones, I do understand capitalism, but I'm having trouble understanding this communism thing. That would be they would be telling you what their problem is. Then you as a teacher could help, instead of them trying to fake what they don't know. Just be open about what they know and what they don't know, so they understand what true learning is really about. That would be breakthrough. Then I like to talk about parallel initiatives. These are important things too. So parallel initiatives, the best way for me to explain it is this. If you're a great golfer, which I'm not, so I'm just making this up, but if you find a great golfer and if all they do is practice their swing and their putting, they'll never be much better than they are. But if they practice their swing and their putting, and they lift weights, and they have better nutrition, and they meditate, and they visualize, their game will improve. As educators, we look at test scores. We see our math scores are down. Our reaction immediately is more math. What about the fact that some of the students don't believe Nobody really cares about them. What about culture issues? What about safety issues? What about a sense that math makes sense to them? What about all those other initiatives that support academics? See, it's about parallel initiatives that drive performance. Here's what we know at the International Center. We know culture drives strategy. You could have all kinds of things going on, but if the room is not a place where a student feels they're valued, they're not going to perform. So as we look at this list, the last point I want to make on this list as messages for you all to take away today is this one. There's no finish line. Oftentimes people say, when are we going to be done with this? Here's your answer. Never. And if someone says to you, are there going to be more new initiatives? Here's your answer. Yes. Will we have to do it? Yes. The answer is always yes, because that's the world we live in today. So, as leaders, as I finish this little just setting the stage, as leaders, you have to do two things at once. And I apologize for that, but that's your job. See those two circles? The circle under operating excellence, I don't have a really good pointer in this room, but do what you're already doing even better. You have to spend time on that. And at the same time, you have to spend time on creating a different future for the student. You have to do both things at the same time. I'm going to talk about that process today. That's what your job is about. It's never just one side. If you're a failing school, you might spend 80% of your time under operating excellence and 20% of your time trying to reinvent the future for your kids. But you better be spending some time on both sides. So our biggest challenge, quite frankly, as I try to lay this out, is this one, the status quo. That's what we're faced with, letting go. So I want to share a video with you. I just shared this at Model Schools this year that kind of puts in it presents to you how quickly the world changes. How many people remember Blockbuster? Right? One of the largest, they had like 2,600 stores in the United States. And I want you to watch, hopefully the video will play, I'm guessing it will. I'm hoping it will. Watch this video and then I'll talk briefly about it.
A new tourist destination in Auburn Hills, Michigan is showing visitors the difficulties life held for Americans in the past. Blockbuster Video aims to transport visitors to a time before the internet. It's an historically authentic recreation of a video store, a specialty shop where customers exchanged money for the short-term use of videos in an archaic system called renting.
The tour is amazing. It's like stepping into a time machine. It's hard to believe that people live this way.
A historical research team spent 3 years making sure every last detail was accurate, from the signs used to promote the store's merchandise to the costumes worn by the store's employees, historical performers who make history come alive for tour groups twice an hour.
My character is based on an actual Blockbuster employee named Jerome, who worked there from May of 1999 to June 2000. My main responsibilities are to man the cash register and to put the movies from the return slot back onto the shelves.
I am a Blockbuster customer named Kathy. 2 times a week, I travel 6 miles to rent and return videos. Oh, look, we're in the comedy section. What's so poignant about this time is the uncertainty. When you get to the Blockbuster, are they going to have your video? Did someone else rent it? Is there going to be a line? Are the alarms going to sound when you walk out the front door? It was very difficult for the people that lived during this era.
Actors say their job is to create a historically authentic experience.
Yes, we have it, but our only copy is currently checked out.
After the organized tour, visitors are allowed to move around the store, exploring the so-called living museum.
It's really amazing that people had to go through so much just to get a movie.
Blockbuster joins a growing number of historical tourism sites, including Buffalo, New York's recreation of Virgin Records Music Store and Iowa City's Borders Bookstore Museum.
So I just want you to understand, I really enjoy that video. Every time I watch it, I see something else. I get another thing out of it. But Blockbuster had 3 chances to buy Netflix. 3. And their position was, no, we're doing a good job. The internet is not, the people aren't going to do that. They're going to continue to come. What we'll do is we'll put popcorn in our stores. We'll start giving snacks. We'll sell snacks with our movies, and it'll be just wonderful. And they just didn't see it coming. I want you to think about that and think about the world we live in, the world of education. You know, the fastest growing form of education in the world today is online. Where are we? What are we doing? What are the challenges that we face? That's what we have to start to think about. So, you see, I don't think you can build the future by perfecting the past. That's the point. And as you can see, my little dinosaur sitting there. Oh crap, was that today? The thing is that change happens so fast. Blockbuster. We're in 2016. They were going strong in 2000, 2001, 2002. All of a sudden, boom, gone with the switch. A very large company, and they missed it. We have to start to wake up to those things. Now, I think we have to begin to look at change as an opportunity to do something amazing, something that actually is amazing. That's really what the opportunity we have before us. You here in Missouri, I've been working with a bunch of Missouri school districts. You have an opportunity to do something amazing, to transform public education. You can decide that, or you can play Blockbuster. The new code word, right? That's going to be my new code word for educators. I'm just going to go around and say Blockbuster. Blockbuster. You see, here's the point. The change almost never fails because it's too early. Almost always fails because it's too late. I'll give you my Blockbuster story for education. I'll say things you won't agree with, and that's okay. I get to fly back to Boston. But the Common Core, it was way too late. It was way too late. It was maybe 20 years ago we could have used the Common Core. But we've moved to a more individualized approach in education. There's no middle anymore. There's no big bell curve. We have more diversity, more spread than ever before, and Common Core came too late. That's really, change, it never fails because it's too early. Now, the thing about change is it doesn't mean you throw everything out. And I want to be clear about that with you. So before I get into the second part of this, is that doesn't mean that everything we're doing is not right. There were a lot of things happening in schools that's really good. But the thing is that we never pull anything out of it. So there are things that we need to stop doing, and this is a challenge for you as educators, is to look at what we're doing and say, what are the things we should stop doing? What are the things that we should continue doing? And then the most important one for me is what should we consider or begin doing? That's what we need to begin to talk about. That's what educators need to begin to do. Now, some of the things we have to stop doing, people will throw the gauntlet in front of you. I was just sharing with some people earlier today here at the conference about, I was at a hotel and these people in front of us were from Portugal and they were trying to communicate with the person behind the desk. So she took out her handy-dandy Apple phone and she hit Portuguese and she put it in front and the person talked and it did transcription and she looked at it and then she talked and gave it back to them in Portuguese and that was it. They were able to communicate. Just think of that. You have voice recognition on your phone. You talk on your phone. So if there's an interpreter, is a program in there that interprets English into French or Portuguese, it does it and then it just reverses it back the other way. So how much do you want to spend on foreign languages next year? I'm just saying. All right, I'm not, but the thing is, we need to begin to think about those kinds of things. So but also behaviors that we need to stop and behaviors we need to continue and build on. So I like this, We need to stop working alone and thinking that you have nothing to learn about education. We have to stop that, right? Because I'm going to tell you, the way we should think is we should think this way. How might my experience in education be used in helping a new idea succeed? Rather than saying, this idea is not good, it should be, how can I help? How could we together take this on? Or pretending education technology has no impact and it'll eventually go away. I've had people say that. They say, there's no data to support that technology is going to make a difference. Well, guess what? Most businesses I know use technology to drive down cost and drive up efficiency. In education, technology is seen as an added cost. In the business world, it's seen as something that drives up cost. Why is that? Because we've got to figure out how to use it differently. So we really need to begin to have educators who are afraid of technology. We need to have them say things like this: how can I show my students and colleagues that I'm a lifelong learner? That's where we need to go with some of this. Or my last one, I just threw a few of these in: ignoring student feedback about the lessons and teaching they experience. We should be talking to students about that. We should be asking them for feedback. How was that class? Tell me about it. How could I be better? Instead, we have another system, a system where somebody goes in and through the miracle of being clairvoyant, understands everything that the students are thinking in their head while they watch a lesson being taught. Wouldn't it be nicer to ask them and get that and figure that part out? So I want to place that kind of these things in the mindset of setting the stage, that there is a tremendous amount of transformation going on. We need to begin to jump into the middle of this. So I want to talk a little bit about the education landscape, where we need to go. And we know this is what's going on right now, this massive collision of trends. I'm going to do these really quickly. So, explosive growth in technology. This screen shows you what happens in 60 seconds on the internet. There are almost 700,000 Google queries every 60 seconds. There's 25 hours of video uploaded to the internet every 60 seconds of every day that we are on this earth. It is full of almost everything. I mean, you go home and your washing machine backs up and it shows you a code. You type it in Google, and next thing you know, there's a video of what's going on, what you need to fix and repair. That kind of changes the world. Content is now easily accessible everywhere. And actually, there was a great article in the New York Times today about that issue. Content used to be king. Content is no longer king. Caring is king, not content. In a school, content we can get. Getting somebody that cares about helping somebody is even more profound. So I'd like to always tell educators and teachers this, that technology will not replace our teachers. But teachers who use technology will certainly replace teachers who do not. And that is a definite. So we have explosive growth in technology. We have shifting policy environment. We have major leaps in the learning sciences. We know more about learning and what it looks like. We can watch the brains learn. We know when we can see active engagement, and we know we could use that. The drive toward personalization. If you haven't, those of you that get Ed Week, if you can't, you can pick up every week, you get Ed Week, and you look in it, you'll see the word, you won't see individualization anymore, you'll see personalization. What works for you, what works for you, what works for you, what works for you. That's what education is really about nowadays. The economic pressure on our traditional delivery model. Look at, folks, this is when I talk to soups, it's hard to say this, but as a former superintendent, I got to say it. Our economic model can't survive. One teacher, 25, 30 kids. The economics of that is not attainable. We got to think about how we build a better design. So I'm going to show you one crazy design in a little bit, but that's what it's going to be about. I mean, look at what the online systems are doing. We have learning content management systems at our university. We have 92,000 students online, and there are professors handling hundreds and hundreds of students. Not that everybody learns that way. I'll get back to that. Widespread dissatisfaction with the status quo. We all know this. We know it, and we know that Phi Delta Kappa does their report every year, and they tell us that my school is fine where my kids go, but every other school is not. So that's a challenge for us. Also, the aging of America. There are fewer people with kids in school. Older population out there. So those are the trends, and this is the theory. Almost everyone wants schools to be better, but no one wants them to be different. And the fact of the matter is they need to be different before they get better. Does that make sense to you all? I mean, this one here is so true to me. Everybody wants them to be better. But then when you say, well, we're going to do this, they said, no, don't make it any different. Just make it better. Can't happen. We have probably driven the model of education that we have to its most efficient point. It was never designed. When I was at the Gates Foundation, we did a study of many of the major systems in the country. We studied New York City schools, and we basically, if all the kids showed up, they were going to be like 60,000 seats short if they all came in to school. The system was never designed to educate everybody the way it was to their fullest. It was designed to educate a third of the kids really well, a third of the kids okay, and a third of the kids to drop out. So there was never any space in the upper grades to carry everybody. You guys have been doing a great job. We've been pushing the envelope. We're getting up in the high 90s. And I chaired the National Dropout Prevention Board, and I'm going to tell you, the model we're using is about as efficient as it's maxed out. We can't get any more power out of it. So it is first different than better. Now the challenge is when I talk about education and I say these things, here's what the big rift is. People say, but we can't be different because policy won't let us. So all of you that thought that, the next slide's for you. Policy is the last thing to change. Remember the two circles? Fix the base and innovate. This circle, this here will tell you why. As a former commissioner, I know this to be true. Policy will not change unless there is a practice that shows that it gets results to inform policy to change. That's the fact. So how do you change? It's when schools, and I know you all do this, you do some innovative and creative things. Now, I always like to warn people, you don't let everybody innovate. You have power over that. The people that you know that can get things done. Somebody comes to you, you're the superintendent, and I happen to know Keith over there, and so I'll say, I go to Keith Marty in Parkway, and I say, Keith, I really have this idea. I want to try this idea. And Keith says, well, write it down. What are your feelings about how you might get this done? Let's put a little plan together, and we'll meet. Go ahead and do it, and we'll meet every 2 weeks, and we'll talk about what kind of results we're getting. And we monitor it for a while. And as it starts to get better, we'll make some tweaks to it, and you practice, you move it. Just that disruptive education I was talking about. You launch the bag phone. It's not really perfect. We tweak it. We make another phone. We make another one. We start to get really good. Then we go to the state, and we say, we have this model, and it looks pretty good. We think we should try it in some other places. That's how you start to build innovation in, and you take control. You people here. So it's not done to you, you lead it. That's what happens. There's not a lot of data that support innovation. There is no data. But if you're not operating at full efficiency, let's try to take it to the next level. This is really important, though, because it's about the fact that you can't wait for policy to change. You got to try something. And by the way, as long as you don't violate, I'm just making this up, not really, but I don't want to get anybody in trouble. As long as you don't play around with health and safety issues, and you're doing something really good for kids, that's what you really want to pay attention to. Now, I show this slide, and those of you that have heard me talk, I show this slide a lot. I show this slide because, this country was a nation of smokers. And when we put our mind to it, we were able to eliminate a lot of it. I remember when they were smoking in schools. How many people remember student smoking areas? Yeah. Do you remember what it was like to tell a principal we're going to eliminate the student smoking area? High school principals, I had 2 of them, and they were like, you can't take that away. I said, yeah, we have to take it away. And then they said, oh, it's going to be awful. They're going to smoke everywhere. And we fought through that. We went through that. I mean, there was smoking in airplanes in this country. People lighting matches in the aisles of airplanes. Try that. Go ahead. Go out, try it. Bring it. See if somebody lights something up in an airplane today. That will not, it's just not going to happen. But change is tough. Easy for me to stand here and talk to you about driving and leading the change, but you're the only folks that could do it. I don't want anybody but educators doing this transformation. Look at where we went. We went from regular phones to cell phones. Everyone will never, I got rid of my landline. None of my kids have landlines. I know some of you still do. But guess what? Most people don't. Remember when we used to take pictures with film? Remember when you had 24 or 36 shots? Now it's 1,000, 2,000. You just hold the button down, no more posing. Remember when we used to have maps? Or even worse, remember when we used to print out MapQuest directions? 37 pages to go like 5 miles. It's like that was the most dangerous thing. Now we have, Waze and all these. Just think of, where are we in education? How different are we from maps? I don't think we're that far. We haven't moved. We still have tons of books. We have like 40-pound backpacks on 3rd graders. They fall down there like a turtle on its back. They can't get up. They have to have like release straps to get up off the ground. But see, it's about reimagination of learning. That's really where we are today. It's how do we get to that point where we reimagine learning? Just going to show you, this is a little bit of a, I'm just looking at my time, a little bit of a boring video for about 30, 40 seconds. But I want you to take a look at moving from the 1950s to the year 2000 in the pit crew kind of way. So.
And now it's Bill Holland coming in on pits in car 3. Bill Hill's from Philly and is currently in 2nd place and hoping to take the checkered flag here today. And the fuel goes in. Having a bit of trouble with that wheel nut. Everybody's standing by. The driver getting refreshment. Also getting updates on the track surface. This guy is super keen to get back out there on the track. And there he goes. All the guards are lined up, ready. And there it is. The quick tire change. A few goes in. Everything ready. And up it goes.
That's pretty amazing. And, you know, just think about that and think about our schools. You know, I try to create those images just to get us a sense that, you know, my God, you know, that just blows you away. And you see, learning has expanded at a rate that's far outpaced our conceptions of teaching. See, I'm not sure it's about teaching as much as it is about learning. Children are born learners. Say, teaching is only one way to achieve learning. And not only is teaching one way, but we have a system that has a significant flaw. And I built this slide when I was chair of the National Dropout Board. I used it with the board members, and I keep using it in presentations because I'm convinced this is a significant problem for us. So on the vertical where it says knowledge and skills, that's all the content you need in 1 year. So let's say Algebra 1 class or first grade content or whatever, the whole freshman year, stack the books up right there. Along the bottom, it's the number of days. I'm going to choose 180 because in the United States, that's pretty close to everybody. So here's what we do in our schools. We give every student 180 days to learn the content that they have. You get 180, you get 180, you get 180, you get 180. We have a bunch of students that don't need that. 60 would do them well. Matter of fact, some of them need 180 in English, but they only need 60 in math. But we give them 180. And then we have a lot of students that could use a little more time, but we give them 180. That's what we do. And we get a lot of kids dropping out from that first line because we make them wait. And no matter how long, no matter how hard you try to hold it in, they are just totally bored. And they make a decision to leave. Using time as a constant is not the model any longer. Look at the diversity in our schools. How many schools in this room, if you've been in that school district for the last, say, if you know that district for the last 20 years or so, or even 10 years, has it changed? Has the population? Yes, it's changed. There's much more diversity. And we still give them 180 days. And we give them 180 days for every subject. So you're doing a great job holding them in, getting where you can get, but we're not going to get the most out of them. And you know that. You all know that. I believe if you're focused on seat time, you are focused on the wrong end of our kid. And that's the truth. It's not about sitting and getting. It's about what you know and what you can do and what you can demonstrate. So the challenge that we have faced with is this. What kind of education? What do we need at this moment in history? Because obviously, there's a flaw in the one that we have. So there's a lot of little elements here, and some people, they're looking for the answer. They're trying to say, like, what's the answer, right? And the fact of the matter is that that dark piece is not the answer. If you didn't do all the other things, the black piece would not matter. That piece would not matter. You've got to do a bunch of things. What are those things? Well, the circuit I'm running in and the research we're looking at talks about several things. So let's just take a quick look at them. First of all, no one model is perfect for everybody anymore. So it's about hybrid, blended, traditional, online. Jeff might love doing math online because he really gets it and he doesn't need to be held up. But when he gets into his English language arts class, he wants to be in front of a teacher. That's the fact. It needs to be personalized. Well, what does that mean? It means anytime, any place, any pace. You have students all summer long. They could have been picking up Algebra 1, or they could be taking an economics course online. They could just be doing their own private study and show up at school, and then say to you, you know, I took Algebra 1 at Stanford University this summer in an online program, and then you'd say, you have to sit for 180 days in front of Mr. Smith because that's what we do. Now, in some states, the state I live in, the state of New Hampshire, they've abolished the Carnegie unit, they've abolished time, and they basically said if a student presents themselves and says that they can meet the standards, you must test them. And if they pass the test, you must give them credit. That's, thank you. Well, that's the issue, right? I mean, I appreciate that because think of what happened. Think of the kids that can do it. We say no. We don't believe it. It also needs to be engaging. I did more studies on this when I was at the Gates Foundation. When we ask kids about education, we say, give us one word to describe it. All in unison now. What's the one word they give us? Boring. It's not engaging. It's boring. It needs to be career-ready focused. It needs to be, this you will not appreciate me saying, but I'm going to say it, and I believe it. All right, but I just say that so that I don't offend anybody. But, in everyone's career, when you're doing your job, they let you use all the tools you need to do the job. So if you're an attorney and you're developing a policy for a school district on transportation, they don't say to you, don't use the internet and don't call other schools, write it all up from your head. They don't do that. They say use all the tools you can possibly use to get the job done, because we're going to have a very high standard for passing. So I've been saying, why do we restrict our students from what they could use, whether they're taking a test or learning something? Why do we say you can't use stuff? That's not what that's not out in the field. That's not the way the world works. If we ask the right questions, you can give them access to anything. So I was sharing this story at lunch today, but the fact of the matter is, like in the Netherlands, when you take a test, you can use anything. They don't care, because their questions are designed so that it doesn't matter. Like a history question might be, who's a more important ally to the United States, Canada or Great Britain? Answer the question. Use everything you can use. It's not something you could cheat on, because you got to come up with your own positions on that. But that's what the world is like. That's more career ready. Businesses want those kind of people. See, the primary aim of education is not to have our students do well in school. It's really to do well in the life they lead outside of school. That's what it's about. If school was really that close to career-ready focused, our valedictorians would be ruling the world. And quite frankly, no offense to any valedictorians in the room, but a study done at Boston College basically says valedictorians are not the most successful people outside of school. Valedictorians are the most successful people in school, not outside of school, because school's highly predictable. Just think of this. We give a student a teacher every day from kindergarten to 12th grade. Every day they tell them exactly what to do, when to do it, and how to turn it in. And then at the end of the 12th grade, we say, now go on your own. Like, when did we let them learn on their own? When did we let any of that transition occur? It just hasn't happened. And the last piece, it needs to be competency-based. And there is significant movement toward competency. There's a bunch of superintendents in Missouri that have been playing around with this as well. It needs to be competency-based. Grades aren't helping us. Like, what is a C in English? What does it mean you can do and can't do? What if there were 45 competencies that you needed to do to pass freshman English, and you had to show that you could do them? That's a much higher standard than a C or a D. You must do it. This map is about competency work in the United States, and states that have been, those darker colored states, and I don't know what color that is, orange, red, rust, make something up. Those states have made significant changes to their laws and rules. They've abolished the Carnegie unit and all of that. Now, you guys are that mustard yellow, which means that there's some stuff emerging in Missouri on this, and I know that for a fact. But states in green are really very close to being red. That's a lot of states moving toward competence. I'm going to pass on this next video that I have, but I want you to read this. I don't like to oftentimes just throw a lot of words on the screen, but this comes from a book called The Great Shift. Listen to this. Knowing with certainty that someone has mastered a discipline means it shouldn't matter how the person got there or what school they attended. At that point, traditional education's monopoly on delivery would end, and America would see a myriad of new models and providers of education. See, if you can do something, that's what it's about. That's the real piece. I'm going to pass this. So, I'm at a point where I'm going to be doing two different things. I was going to stop for a minute, but I'm going to just go a little bit further and then come back to this point. But one of the questions I'm going to be throwing at you, and I want you to think about this a little bit. I'm going to kind of lead you a little way in this. But what do we mean by learning? What is it? I was with about 500 curriculum instruction people in Atlanta. They were from the Georgia schools. And I said to them, spend 15 minutes. Come up with what you believe learning is. You would have thought I asked them to solve the nuclear fusion problem. They were blinded. They just couldn't come up with learning. And I think the fact is that's one of our big troubles. We don't understand what learning really is. We really don't. We think it's having some information in your head. That might have been true before you had that brain appenditure that you have in front of you at your tables. It's kind of like, the extra piece of your mind is now that device. See, I think the 21st century is the rise of the self-learner. I'm going to blow by a slide here for a second. And I think it's about changing the way we think about our work. Now, most of us in education, we think this way. How would I teach this content? So I have this content, and we would all huddle up and say, how would I teach this? I think you have to rethink that strategy. I think you have to think this way. If I had this to learn, how would I learn it? That's what I think. That's the big shift. Because it's not the same as being taught. It's how would I learn it? So when you're confronted with something that you don't know, what do? We Google it, or we call somebody we know, or we cry. I mean, some of us cry. But when I don't know something, the first thing I do is grab my phone and kind of throw it in there. I blow a phrase in the top line, right? And just type it in there and see what comes up. Then I start to narrow it down. And I try to figure out, in my life, I always thought, is there a video that will help me understand this? Because I'm much better at video. That's what I do. So I want you to think about this. This was a quote by Peter Drucker, big business guru. Here's what he said. He said this in 1995. He said, in the next 20 years, power will shift to the customer. For the simple reason is the customer now has full access to information worldwide. What did he mean by that? Well, here's what he meant. Who in this room has bought a car, a refrigerator, a TV, or a stove in the last year or so? Anybody? So did you go to the showroom and say, show me what you've got? Probably not. You probably went online, looked at what you wanted, analyzed it, printed it out, or brought your phone and walked into the store and said to the person something like this: I want this model, and I'm willing to pay this, and I know your price is higher, but I can get it down the road for this price, so you tell me what you want to do. Right? That's how we shop now. And if you want to spend an hour in a Best Buy, just stand back and watch people come in. It's really cool. All the people that are there are just gophers. Like, go get this item. Okay, I'm going to go get it, and they go get it. That's what it's all about. The customer now has more power, so the power has shifted to the customer. So I'm going to play a quick video. I want you to listen to this teacher. His name is Jordan Dolier. He is a math teacher in Hawaii. He talks about wanting to be a great uncle for his niece, and then he makes the connection to being a great teacher. He does it. He explains what I would hope to be able to explain much better than I can, and he does it in a pretty good way. And then when he finishes that, I want to show you a model I developed to think about teaching, and then we're going to do a little bit of work. So let you listen to Jordan.
I've always wanted to be a fantastic uncle. As the youngest of 3 brothers, with one brother who's 4 and another brother who's 8 years older than me, I always kind of figured I wasn't going to have kids first, or so I hoped. And when my first niece was born, I made sure to take every opportunity I could to do what I thought a fantastic uncle would do. Now, one such opportunity, I was on the back lanai at my parents' house, and I was sitting with one of my brothers, and my niece, Haley, who was 5 years old at this time, that's her, she came up to me, and she tapped me. She said, "Uncle Jojo," I'm Uncle Jojo. She said, "Uncle Jojo, would you please get me some juice?" And I thought to myself, like, of course I can get you some juice. I want to be a fantastic uncle. I'll get you all the juice in the world. I'll make it just rain juice upon you. Of course I'll get you some juice. So I stood up. And as I stood up, I felt a tap on my shoulder. And I looked, and it was my brother. And he said, "Hey, where are you going?" And I thought, well, I'm going to go be a fantastic uncle. I'm about to get my niece some juice. And he said, "Well, do you think she could do that for herself?" And I hadn't thought of that, so I said, well, what do you mean? And he said, "Well, really, what does it take to get juice?" And I said, well, I'd have to go inside, and I'd have to open the refrigerator, and I'd have to, pick up a packet of juice and, unscrew the cap and, give it to Haley. And he's like, "Okay. Now, do you think she's capable of doing that herself?" And I said, I want to believe in my niece. I want to be a fantastic uncle, so of course she could do that by herself. And he looked at me and he said, "Well, then why would you take that experience away from her? And why would you make her depend on you to get juice?" And I had not thought of it like that. And as an educator, I've found that sometimes in my drive to do what I think a fantastic educator would do and do as much as I can, sometimes I've taken away meaningful experiences from my students. Because sometimes what we do for others is a tacit statement of what we believe they can't do for themselves.
So just think about that. As educators, we do so much for those students. We don't want them to struggle. We make sure they know everything they need to do. If they're struggling, we jump on it and we try to solve it for them. We set the lesson up for them. Then we tell them to go be learners. All they've been is students. They really haven't ended up being learners. See, and I think this, I tweeted this out a while ago, but a teacher who teaches a student to learn without them prepares them for the 21st century. That's our job. Our job is to get them to be learners, confident, aggressive learners. When they're confronted with the unknown, they know how to attack it. That's what we should be building. That's where I think we're going in the 21st century. So over the last couple of years, I've been playing with this model, and it is not perfect, but I'm going to explain it to you, and then I'm going to give you all a task. And I'm going to ask you to behave like your best, great students, But I want to talk about a way to think about learning based on this model up here. Before I do it, I need to explain 2 things to you. I need to explain this. I don't know if from where you are, if you can tell what that is. That is a self-checkout system. And so let me first talk to you about self-checkouts. The guy I worked with when I was at Penn Foster, the big online group that Bain Venture owned, he was the former, He led the IBM team that helped design and develop self-checkouts for Walmart. He was one of the lead investigators. And what Joe would tell me about self-checkouts is this. Self-checkouts are the slowest checkout in the supermarket, but they are the most satisfying checkout in the supermarket. And I said, how could they be the slowest and the most satisfying? And he explained it to me like this. So if you go through the supermarket and you go to a professional checker-outer, right, the professional cashier, and you're standing there and they have your six-pack of soda or whatever it is, and they're scanning it and it doesn't go beep. And they go 1, 2, 3, and you're standing there. How do you feel? Like, will you hurry up? You're a pro. This should be one swipe. Just beep. Keep moving, right? And they take their time and they get it done. And you're a little bit, the psychologist would say, you're a little bit aggravated that this did not happen faster. Now, when you're in the self-checkout line by yourself and you have all your groceries there and you're going like 1, 2, 3 over the scanner, you're licking it, you're wiping it some more, you're looking, all of a sudden you tilt it a certain way and it goes beep. You say, yes, put it down. And now it goes and you keep going slowly through these things. Like 3 hours later, you leave the store, and the fact is that you did it yourself. That's where the satisfaction comes in. You did it yourself. You had full control over the experience. Does that make sense to you all? All right, so hold on to that for a second. One more picture to demonstrate before I share this model with you is that one there, Amazon. How many people have bought something from Amazon in this room? Yeah, that's good. How many people bought something while I was talking? Because that's good. Thank you. I've had some people buy, stuff and they say, "Oh yeah, I did." It's like, "Oh great." So she just bought something. Anyway, look at Amazon provides you with the shopping experience that they do not want to talk to you. They want you to have the ultimate shopping experience, and you do it by yourself. They give you ways to price compare. You'll figure out the sizes, look at it, they'll twist it around. They give you everything. And if something on Amazon doesn't work, like there's a button and it clicks for like making shoes beige when they come in beige and black, but the beige button doesn't work, if you spend time letting them know that night they'll go in and they'll fix that, and that will never happen again. Because they don't want, that's the most expensive, most expensive service is talking to a person. So just think of how comprehensive they have to be. Now let me talk about this model. You see that bottom? Self-help. Look at double-digit addition with carrying has not changed ever. I mean, it's the same. We have a lot of content that we teach. It does not change. We should build first. Instead of the teacher giving the big lesson first, we should be building units for students to learn on their own first. Because here's the deal. If somebody learns something on their own, they never forget it. Learning Sciences tells us they will never forget it. Never. So you build the material for them to learn first, right? And you see that one-on-one up the top? That's the teacher. Teacher's watching this learning going on. First, the teacher builds stuff for students to learn on their own. She's watching. Students at the bottom, some students get it. Other students aren't getting it. Well, maybe instead of, if they can't get it, they move up and they say, I'm going to work with Chris. Chris got it. Chris, can I work with you? Help me figure it out. If Chris and I can't figure it out, there's a one-to-many. Maybe there's a paraprofessional. Maybe there's somebody they could phone. Maybe there's another person in the building they could go to. That person at the top is the most expensive service you have. That's the professional teacher. They're watching the learning. They're watching students at the self-help, and they're seeing that there's a question down in the self-help that's confusing kids. So what they're going to do that night is they're going to fix it, just like Amazon would, and put in a couple of more lessons and put in some probes there. Or maybe they'll do a 30-second video that says, if you're having problem understanding the difference between capitalism and communism, hear it, think about it this way, and you do something. And then you load it so students begin to learn on their own. That's one of the game-changing ideas to kind of play with. Because you know what? Embedded in there is a self-assessment too. I can't get it. I need more help. I got to go somewhere else. the teacher works with the people that need them the most, rather than the teacher working with everybody first, and students believing that they need a teacher to learn. You don't. That's because the system we've designed says you need a teacher first. Now that can be a little controversial, right? But if we think about how some big systems work, and I'm not saying you do this for everything, but there's a lot of things you could easily do this with. So hopefully that makes a little sense. Because it's, you build it this way, you stack it up, and that teacher now has full control over the learning. Full control. So I'm going to stop, and I'm going to give you a task. I've talked about an hour and 30 minutes, actually a little less than that, an hour and 15. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you all a task. And I'm going to explain it, and then I'm going to put some questions up on this screen that I want you to work on. I'm going to give you some time. I want you to be innovative, creative, thoughtful. I want you to think about some of the things that I've shared. And then we're going to have a little bit of reporting out. We won't be able, this room is a little big to have everybody report out and still end in time. And then I'll come back and wrap up some things. But here's where we're going to go. Just getting to back this up a little bit. Here we go. So, I want at each of your tables, there is some paper in the middle. Now here's the first order of business. As superintendents and school leaders, I know you don't like to do these kinds of things. So you're going to pretend today. It's Sunday, let's pretend. So here's what I want you to do. At your table, my birthday is October 30th. The person at your table, don't have to figure this out yet, let me finish. The person at your table whose birthday is closest to October 30th gets to appoint the person to take notes. All right? That's how it's going to go. And I'm going to give you about 20 minutes to play at your table on 2 questions. The first question is, I'd love you to talk at your table about, create a definition of what do we mean by learning. In the state of Missouri, what is learning? Because I'm going to be frank with you, I think every school should be able to talk to the parents in their community about what they mean by learning. They should have, this is what we mean by learning. Because a lot of people believe what learning is all about is simply about being able to throw back the right answers. Maybe that's not actually it, but I won't go there. I'll let you do that. So I'd like you to come up with a little bit of what do we mean by learning. And when you finish that, I'll give you, like I say, 20 minutes. I'm going to give you after 10 minutes, I'll say you might want to move on. The second question is even more profound and more powerful, I think, right now. And, this is about, once we define learning, I want you to pretend that the MAP is gone, right? There is no MAP, so don't try to trigger off of MAP. And, but based on your definition, you at the table, you're the leadership team in this school district. You guys, you're your own team. And what you must do, you're accountable for student learning in your system. What would the assessment system that you would build look like? What would it look like if you're responsible? So you're going to talk about what learning is, then you're going to build an assessment system that represents the support or the right system for that. Is that, I'm not going to say put your hand up because there's so many people out there. I will be happy to roam around if you're stuck or in trouble. But what I would really like is we're going to spend, say, 20 minutes, hard discussion about this important work. What it is, what is learning, and if you were responsible for that accountability for that system, what would it look like? How would you measure learning? All right? So I have my timer going. I'll tell you when 5 minutes has gone by, 10, 15, 20. and then we'll stop. So take 20 minutes. If you need help, international sign for help is like this, and I'll send Keith Marty over or someone like that. So I know this is not a task that, with people that are from other districts and you have different philosophy, and there's a lot of differences in the room. And that's one of the nice things about education. But, we're all in this business of learning, and I don't think this is a task that is not transferable to your district. To have, in your schools, people talking about what is learning, what are we all about, what does it mean. So, is there a brave table to begin a brief throw out? There is no right and wrong answer here. We're not going to post them, but they're thought about learning. Anyone have a unique answer on learning? So if not, I'll just start going like this, Yeah, thank you. And I'll repeat it if we can't hear it because there's not a lot of big mics here. Maybe this will work.
We went through several iterations, but in its simplest form, we said, getting better at X.
Getting better at X, whatever that X seems to be. Could be anything. But it's about improvement, not about staying in one spot. Very interesting. Another group. I'll practice great wait time, but not too much because you guys have dinner coming up tonight. Do you guys have something at this table? You do. See? Constance has it. Sarah's communicating. This is a team.
We have a whole list of stuff.
Good.
It's about building capacity, relevance, knowledge, skills, an ongoing process, a spectrum, an application, attaining, and self-assessment.
Oh, wow. So there's a lot of really key words in there. And one of the things that just from doing this with other groups and having people talk about it, that word that you end it with, self-assessment, is when somebody begins to internally say, I got this or I don't have it. That kind of speaks to a lot to really what learning, in my mind, what learning is really kind of about. Like, I need more. I need more or not. And that goes back to the probably solving for X. What about another? One more. What's this side got to say? This is like the... Do you guys have one at this table? Poke at them, quick. Here we go.
Mastery content.
So they have a long list as well.
We have a
very long list. Take a nap. We'll be right back. No, here we go.
Well, probably what we captured most was creating and demonstrating within set conditions within certain domains.
So creating and demonstrating some of that knowledge and that they could use it. I mean, do we have all of our students demonstrate the use of knowledge in unpredictable ways, in unpredictable situations in our schools today? Yeah, in some classes we do, but in others we really don't. It's not something we happen to see. So you had then this on the slide, we talked about, well, so if that's what learning is, what is then, how do we evaluate it? What's the connection to it? So let's talk a little bit about what that accountability system looks like. Because now you're in charge. You're the commissioner of education, and you have all the votes of the school board and the legislature, and you can design the accountability system for the state of Missouri. What would it be like? What would it include? So, let's go roving microphone again. Did you guys come up with any? Maria did. Maria's smart. Assessment, Maria.
We talked about portfolio of student work over time, culminating with a capstone project that would assimilate learning across disciplines, along with ongoing, so that's more sort of summative, and then for formative assessment, ongoing student goal setting and collaborative student-teacher evaluation of student progress toward learning targets.
So the concept of portfolio, showing their work over time, and does that make sense to some? How many other people had a demonstration of some sort of their work? So don't we do that now? Don't they do that in the classroom? Not to that level, probably, right? Not to that level. So I got to come over here, Mike. I got to get a sense of what you've been typing for a long time. So I don't know if I'm under a speaker, something up there.
Yeah, we're just stealing from everybody else.
Good.
So we had clear outcomes, personal goal setting, and regular feedback on progress toward the defined outcomes. And this is a recursive loop. So kids are learning how to go deeper and deeper with their learning, and they're getting feedback.
So their assessment system is a loop that they just keep looking at and evaluating and carrying it with them. Kind of what most artists would do with their work. Kind of what most people in the field might do with their work. Anybody else have something different than that? Yeah.
There probably should be a collaborative element of it. So we're trying to build the students' capacity to not only be successful in school, but in life. Collaboration would be one of it. So how do you create an assessment that includes capstone, which I really strongly feel, but also that there's a collaborative element to that?
That's great. One part of the university that I work at, we created a program, a part of the university called College for America, which is all competency-based. There's no classes. But all the work that the students have to do, it comes in 3 batches. There's individual skill work that somebody must attain. So it's like you have to learn this stuff. Then there's individual product work that you must do. And then the highest level is there is project work that you must do with others and build. So it's kind of that whole idea of you can't just be alone in the world today. In the workplace, it's about collaboration. So how do we get people to do work on their own, to learn a skill, kind of what we were talking about, like they get skill, and how do we get them to do project work on their own, which is bigger than just a skill, and then how do we get them to do a project that involves multiple groups of people, possibly even some people on the other side of the planet in collaboration, as companies do today. Very different than just an assessment day. Anyone else have anything they want to add to this assessment piece? Yeah.
I would just say I feel kind of fortunate in Missouri because on the SPED side of things we have dynamic learning maps, and actually if you look at the practice is new, we're rolling it out, but the philosophy behind it is a lot like what I see the assessment system for this being, because it opens up time and it opens up the way that students, and it's that universal design piece. And
so it's dynamic, it opens up time. How many I remember I was doing a lot of work in Texas, and when it came time for the state assessment, principals would say it would be a good day if we don't have more than 4 kids throw up. And that's the truth on state assessment day, because it's all about like, ooh, and they don't see assessment as part of learning. So here's one of the conversations I had at one of the tables, which is this. If we go to that slide, please. Learning, the more you talk about learning, you can't separate it from assessment. It's not really that different. There's a consistent loop in learning and assessment because we want students to self-evaluate. They should be able to say to you what they know and don't know. And then they are in control of the learning. Does that make sense to you all? I mean, giving control, giving voice, that's really where it is. They have virtually no voice in assessment, particularly summative assessment. So one of the things I need you to do, and then I'm going to bring some closure to a piece of this, and you all can then go have dinner and all whatever. But is that even though the paper that you wrote may be a little sketchy here or there, we need to capture your thinking, because what we want to do is collect all of those and then just get it on a big giant sheet. And then the practice I use is you get that back to everybody that's here. And it's a bunch of words. It won't be, but if you look at them, if you look at the words and you start sitting with your leadership team and with some teachers and you start saying, well, people talked about this and that, and look at the different things, it will start to trigger for you different ways to think about learning and different ways to think about assessment. It's a really valuable tool in that way. If we get, just allowing us to take it, you don't need to put your name on it, and get it back to you, that would be really critical. So I'm going to just back this slide up for a second and get to this slide right here. Woo! Because I can't leave without giving you a sense of leadership, because that's your job. And when I've been talking about leadership, it's like management and leadership, those two circles. But leadership, I think, is very different today. And I want to see if this slide resonates with you before I bring this to the closure. So when I think about leadership, here are the components of great leadership. They start off down here at this level, where people say, well, leaders need data. Well, the fact is that's good. You need data. Data gives us information. That's always nice. Now, information is useless unless you add synthesis to it. When you add synthesis to information, you get some knowledge. As a leader, knowledge is important. So information, knowledge, that's really good. But if you can then add to this knowledge some experience, experience leads you to have some judgment. Now, I'm going to suggest to you that in most of our training as leaders, we stop there. We basically, that's, this would be what some people would say, this is good leadership. They have data, they use data to get information, they look at it, they analyze it, they get knowledge, they apply the knowledge to their experience, they get judgment, they make judgments, that's how the system runs. But that's not really where we need to go in the world today. To judgment, you have to add something like intuition. Now, this scares people. Intuition, goodness gracious, intuition. You mean just how you might feel about something? Yes. Steve Jobs, when he launched the iPod, all the data, information, knowledge, and judgment said, the world does not need another way to listen to music. The Sony Walkman has got the joggers market cornered. Nobody needs more ways to listen to music. In his intuition said, I think there's a better way. He challenges the status quo. That's what happens. Intuition challenges the status quo. Here I am in Missouri, and I just say, like, the NCAA Final Four, the top 64 basketball teams, right? They wouldn't play. They would not have to play the tournament if data, information, synthesis, knowledge, experience, and judgment were accurate, because the first team would win. They don't. Other stuff happens. Intuition allows you to innovate, because if you're going to break from tradition, you have to use intuition. Now, innovation is great, but with innovation, you must have passion. You must have a sense that this is what I want to. I mean, in my life right now, I just feel like there is no better time to excite and be an educator. It's about the passion to do what is right for these kids that are looking at us saying, we're bored, it's not working. From passion, passion is great because passion will give you voice. The ability to say what you need to say, to be strong on what you are strong. And that top four is where you all need to be in this world today. We can write a computer program to do the bottom part. because it's nothing but if-then statements. But intuition, passion, innovation, voice, those come from other places. So I want you to think about that, because here's what we know. If we listen to the voices of students who believe, and this is a very deep research embedded in this from a guy by the name Russ Qualia, who runs the Qualia Institute for Student Aspirations, but students who believe they have a voice in a school are 7 times more likely to be academically motivated. 7 times more likely to want to work hard and get the job done. That's a game changer. And if we listen to the voices of teachers who say they have a voice in their schools are twice as likely to work hard and 4 times more likely to be excited about their career. If you have teachers that are excited about their career, rather than saying who's doing things to us, rather than having teachers say, we can be the change, that's what happens when teachers have voice. And also when teachers have voice, when teachers have a voice in decision-making in their schools, they're 4 times more likely to believe they can make a difference. Those are game changers. Those are what I call parallel initiatives. It's like the things that we could do to get teachers, to get students, to get administrators and others to add to the value of the learning. That happens in that arena. That's where that stuff happens. So I'm not going to go to that one there. I just want you to think about, I'm going to close with this slide set here, because you're responsible for the system that you're in. And I like to get you all to understand the importance of aligning systems for success. I kind of believe, this is my belief in education, is success by design, not by chance. In other words, everyone in that building is a winner. Like right now, I was successful in the Boston Public Schools when I grew up, but I remember in the 7th grade getting John Reagan as my English teacher. He changed my life. If I had gone to the other 7th grade class, I don't know where I would have been. I was successful in the Boston Public Schools by chance, not by design. Does that resonate with you? It's like who you get. So I want you to think about this. How many in this room have ever had somebody in their family or a close friend or a child have to have serious surgery? Anybody? Okay. So here's the deal. You wanted to have the best surgeon in the world. Like my wife had surgery, I wanted her to make sure she had somebody who did 1,500 of these or 10,000 of these. But here's the fact. You could have the best surgeon in the world, but if the person that cleaned that operating room didn't do a good job, the person that set up the tools, the person that set up the IV, the person that brought the laundry in, if they didn't do their job right, that surgery could be a failure. So you don't want just the best surgeon, you want the best system. Does that make sense to you? That's what you want. You want everything. I fly a lot. I watch the pilots get on. And when she gets on or he gets on, I'm going to tell you this, I want them to be older than 11. Right? Because lately, and I don't want them to have a brand new bag, with like a sticker on it, like from mom to son, from mom. I want like an old crusty bag. I want all that. But the fact of the matter is, when you're in that plane, if the people that fueled it, if the air traffic controllers aren't doing their job, the weather people, anybody, you're in jeopardy. Doesn't matter who the pilot is. You're in jeopardy if one person. So you want the best system. So where I'm going with this is you could impossibly imagine. It's like when I look at my grandkids going into a school, I want them to have the best teacher, but I know quite simply that it's not just about the teacher. I've seen great teachers burn up in schools because they don't have a voice, they don't have support, they leave. There's a variance between teacher A and teacher B is so great in our systems at times. That's the problem. We need a system. So that's why we have to come to an agreement. We want the best system we want the best school system. And the issue is we need a system. For a system to operate well, they have to have an agreement on what is it that we're doing? What is learning? What is this thing all about? How do we assess learning really efficiently? How do we make students feel like they have a voice in their learning? How do we make teachers feel like they have a voice in the decisions that are going on? That's a significant difference over the way it has been in the past. So in Missouri, I think you have an incredible opportunity. I mean, the time is right for a state in the heartland, in the middle of the country, to kind of begin to think about how do we send the message that learning in Missouri is different, that it's driven by its educators who are innovative and creative. And showing up at a school district in Missouri is just like going to work at Google or Apple or Microsoft, where they're constantly looking, what is it that we need to be doing next? That's how you have to approach this next year. I think tomorrow you're going to hear from Pedro Noguera, who's a phenomenal speaker. I think you got great opportunity. Thank you for letting me hang out with you this evening, and I'm going to turn it back over, I think, to Stacy, I believe. Is that right? Yeah. Thanks very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Please thank Dr. McNulty again for his words to us. This is getting us off to a great start. A lot to think about. I know when he said he was turning it back over to me, I was kind of caught off guard because I was thinking about all of the things that he's been saying this whole time. Just a couple of quick things. When we dismiss from here, we'll be going immediately to the new superintendent's recognition. It's in the Windsor Ballroom. Everyone is invited, so please come and wish the new superintendents well. And if you have a lot that you're thinking about, a lot that you want to say about this conference, our hashtag is MOED16, MOED16. So please share your thoughts, and we will see you at the new superintendent's reception.